Committee meeting today, July 20th, 2020. The meeting is called to order at 7:02. Kiana, do you mind doing the honors again and taking notes, jotting down notes?
No, but I would prefer to know that ahead of time next time so I can get prepared for it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Now, go ahead. You said 7:02?
7:02.
Okay.
We can talk offline on how to handle it going forward. You know.
Okay.
Members roll call. Kiana Trebu.
Present.
And Esther Boyd on our committee.
Here.
We also have other members that are present. We have Tim Engel. We got Charles, Chief Tillman, Rosemary, and I think that's all I see. Is there anyone else that's on? I think everybody received their packets, either through electronic email or there were packets, I believe, in each person's box. So we'll just take a few minutes to review and approve the previous minutes for June. So they should have been in your packet. Any questions or corrections on the minutes? I need a motion to approve the previous minutes from June 2020.
I can make a motion.
Go ahead.
To approve the minutes from June Finance Committee.
I second it.
With the June 2020 minutes approved and seconded, we'll begin to move to the agenda items that are scheduled for tonight's meeting. We will start with an income tax update with Charles. That information I know was emailed out. I saw it electronically. I know some members have copies, but if not, it was sent electronically. So I will turn it over to Charles to give us a revenue year-to-date monthly update, as well as the total road levy that's been collected for July 2020, and an update on if there's any other updates on the tax court.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I have the volume all the way up and I can just hear you all faintly.
We hear you.
Good. So the email that I sent out over the weekend, it shows that June wasn't as promising as we had anticipated it to be, considering that we had a pretty good month for the month of May. I was hoping to see an upward trend in our collections for June, but that didn't happen. If you look at the first two reports, June of 2020 and June of 2019, the revenues were down from $547,000 that we collected in 2019 for June to $436,000 for June of 2020. That's about $112,000 difference. Each category, the business, the residential, and the withholdings, each one of them were down. The business accounts right around $30,000 off, which is a very unpredictable number, whether we're dealing with this pandemic or not. Just what we've seen over the years is the business accounts can be up or down for a various number of reasons. The residential accounts were down about 50%. From 21,000 down to 10,000 for the month of June of 2020. Not quite $11,000 collected. Of course, we know that that number is going to be boosted in the month of July, and we're seeing it already with, of course, the deadline is already passed, July 15th. But as returns, still there are a lot of late filers. So we expect to see a huge increase in our residential accounts for the month of July, but needless to say, they are down for June. Our withholdings, some companies just haven't come back full steam with hiring employees back or bringing employees back. So that's the huge drop that we're seeing in the withholding accounts. We collected $424,000 for June of 2019 and $352,000 here in June of 2020. Like I said, there's about $112,000 that were off year over from 19 to 20. And of course, a lot of this is due to the pandemic. Also, I noted in the email regarding our road collection amount, that amount has surpassed $1 million. I know that bids are being sent out or being sent in, and the road collection has passed $1 million since its inception, since January of 2019. Those are the 5 reports that show what we look like for the month of June and year to date, January through June 30th. It continues to be very unpredictable. I'm hopeful for July. It's looking busier than even April of 2019 so far. Let's hope that it continues. There's a lot to process, still a lot of money to put into the bank for the month of July. So I'm processing individual returns and business returns around the clock. Are there any questions?
Now, I think it's expected just based on, when we hear, of course, the pandemic. It's probably got a lot of decisions have to be made out there, to pay or not. I do get that. And like you said, we just have to hope that we can continue getting our tax revenue in, but it's almost like you said, expected just based on the situation that the country is in. So you're right. You said you were about off $100,000 from last year, 2019 to 2020. You're off about 100,000 as far as collection piece of it. But we hope some of that rolls in just with the extension that was given to residents to pay by July 15th. So we'll just have to see how it looks for the next finance meeting, how it looks for as collections. And it looks like we had, you said $1,013,995 that was in the road levy. And it looks like, I think we were waiting on some bids for that. So hopefully that'll be, we'll hear about that at some point soon. We can start to do something with that money. So does anybody else have questions for Charles?
Pam?
Yes.
Like I said, I wish I was a lip reader tonight. I would have understood what you just said. I'm not able to.
You can't hear me?
I hear you talking, I just hear a faint, I didn't understand if there was a question in what you just said. I don't know if it was or not, but if there was a question in what you said, I'm not able to understand it, and hopefully you can, or if anyone has questions, they can email or call me tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pam, I have a question.
Okay.
It sounded like maybe Charles was wrapping up, but unless I missed it, there was also the tax court update for his section. Did I miss him giving that report, or did he not give it yet?
He hasn't given it yet.
Okay. Thank
Charles.
you.
Charles,
Yes.
can we get the tax court update?
Yes. We have talked to the prosecutor. She's on board. Of course, the magistrate has been on board. Tax court, we're sending out letters weekly. It looks like tax court is going to be here before the month of August is over with. Court is held 2 times a month, so I'm thinking that tax court is going to be the second court appearance for the month of August. I'll have all of those details wrapped up before the month of course, July is over with. Hopefully I'll have those details wrapped up this week, but tax court is coming. Looks like it's going to be the second court date in the month of August.
Are you working with Officer Tillman, Chief Tillman, with the courts, the police department? Are you working with them? I thought I heard at one time you guys were going to try to work together so we could lower the cost.
Louder, please. I'm sorry.
Are you working with Chief Tillman?
Chief Tillman has offered his assistance. He has helped me on some things regarding court. There's more work that he and I have to do. So that's a part of tax court for sure. I've been in conversation with Chief Tillman on a number of times.
And is that to reduce the cost as well? To reduce the cost for the courts?
Did you say the cost?
Yes.
That I don't know right now. How much expense I guess you're referring to the expense of the magistrate and the prosecutor. It all depends on, of course, how many cases we have. Some people are doing what they need to do to avoid coming to court, which is a plus. Some others will have to go to court. So the set number that we have right now is not set. So it all depends on how many cases, and of course, how long, how much time is required from the magistrate and from the prosecutor.
Okay,
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
yes.
I will reach out to Mr. Willis tomorrow to let him know what some of the discussion was with regards to how we were going to proceed with tax court, and we'll get that all cleaned up, and then he'll be able to respond back to you more appropriately after I brief him on tonight's meeting.
Okay, great. Charles, could you hear Chief Tillman?
I'll talk to him in the morning. I saw him talking, but I didn't understand what he said.
Okay.
But we'll talk in the morning.
Are there any other questions for Charles or anything on tax court? Okay, if not, we will move on to our finance update with Tim. And Tim provided us with the finance director's report.
Yes.
I'll turn it over to you.
All righty. Just sort of going down the agenda items. In terms of audit status for the village, the auditor state is still continuing to conduct the 2018-2019 financial audit. We've been able to provide the auditors with all of their requests. They are currently in the review process. I've had a couple of conversations with the senior audit manager, and he believes, as do I, that we'll probably have the post audit probably around the end of August by the time the review process is done. So that's good. He will send me a draft report here in the next day or so, and I'll kind of review that as well to see what some of the results were, and if there are any corrections we can make before it goes to before it gets published. I'll try to go ahead and make those for us. Any questions about the progress of the audit? Okay. In your reports packets, we've provided the appropriations and revenues reports as of June 30, 2020. The village has collected 48% of budgeted revenues and expended 42% of appropriations. We did add a couple of new funds this month. Fund 2151, which is the Coronavirus Relief Fund. That is a federal fund. We got some federal money to help us out with some coronavirus expenses. And then we also added Fund 2069, which is a state fire and equipment grant fund. The fire department got a couple of grants, and the state grant should be accounted for in a separate fund. So we added that one as well.
Is that the fund that they're purchased the CPR equipment, was it?
No, the CPR equipment. Yeah, no, the CPR equipment can actually be, and I'm sorry, maybe I just misspoke. So the Coronavirus Relief Fund can be used for CPR equipment. The state fire equipment grant is for fire equipment. It's a $1,200 grant for equipment and training. So I don't know if I answered that right or not, but we can purchase CPR equipment with the coronavirus fund now. So that is allowable.
I just know from the last meeting, they were saying they were purchasing two. I think they were $14,000 each or something. Was that under this fund, or that was something totally different?
$14,000 CPR equipment. I don't recall seeing a purchase order or hearing about that. I know Chief Johnson had talked to me about some CPR equipment, and it was in the neighborhood of $12,000.
Okay.
And that can be used from this fund.
Okay.
The other item I'm not familiar with.
Okay, I might be talking about that. I knew it was pretty expensive. But I was
Yeah.
just wondering if it was under there. That's fine.
Yep. And we have receipts and expenses reports. These will be the same ones presented to council for approval. For the month of June, the village collected $515,625.98, and we dispersed $450,708.34. We've included those reports from the UN as well. And then in terms of general fund, the village has collected about 44% of total general fund budgeted revenues and expended about 46% of general fund appropriations. So we're still keeping more than we spend, which is nice. Also included is your fund balance report. That'll be included every month from now on, and that'll kind of make everybody aware of what our individual fund balances are. Were there any questions about any of those that I went over? Okay. Also included was an overtime report. The village spent $15,115.17 in overtime for the month of June. And the village has spent a total of $82,320.05 in overtime this year, with the police department and fire departments accounting for 57% and 30% of those charges respectively. So our police and fire are working overtime, but that's kind of part of their part of that job. They end up putting those hours in.
Well, that's because we're shorthanded, right?
We're shorthanded on both of them, and I know that sometimes the way the fire, certainly the way both of those departments work, sometimes you end up with overtime no matter what you do. But yes, certainly shorthanded in both of them. Negative fund balances. We identified our negative fund balances in May. Since identification, we've eliminated $22,301 in negative fund balances. So we're making progress. We'll continue to make more of that as the year moves on.
I had a question on that one.
Sure.
So the fire 2901, the fire levy.
Right.
You had 61,972 negative.
Right.
And then it went up. So it's like you added to the negative balance of $1,500. Do you know what that is?
It was a disbursement from the fire levy. The levy will end up getting around a $250,000 receipt from the Hamilton County Auditor's Office in August. So we're tracking that fund and making sure it doesn't go any further into the red, but that fund is going to spend money out of it. So that fund balance that negative balance will go away by the time we meet for Finance Committee next month. That one will just work itself out.
Okay. So you expect $250,000 to go into the fund, and that'll put it around about 180. Okay. So then you'll be in the
about that.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So we're not, if there's something that gets charged to it, especially for that amount, we're not overly worried about it because we know it works itself out.
Okay.
Recreations income versus receipts. We've got a table included in the report that kind of summarizes what recreations has brought in terms of receipts as well as spent. My assumption is that we're kind of more concerned about general fund than food levy and pool levy, as they kind of have their own income sources. General fund receipts for recreations were $15,252. The recreations expenditures were $126,932. So we're running about $112,000 in the red in recreations. But that's to be expected as well. I think with COVID and shutting so many things down, a lot of their income streams have been shut down as well. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kiana.
Yeah, I had a question related to this, and I know a lot of this is due to COVID, but
Sure.
able to do a comparison from this time in 2019?
I can provide that.
Okay.
I'll
Good to see.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll take a look at that tomorrow and I'll push that out to the committee. To council, rather.
Yeah, because if not, we're going to need to figure out how we can increase our receipts coming in. I don't know, with programs or whatever that looks like. so we can try to offset more of the expenditures that are coming in. Because if we're at 126 in June,
Yeah.
we expect another, I don't know, that doubles.
It does. And
That's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it's salaries, a lot of it's payroll. So it becomes problematic. But you know, recreations. I think I was talking to Esther when she came by today. You know, they're not going to make money, unfortunately, but it's a service that the village provides, just like police and fire. But we do want to sort of work on that budget, so we're not spending quite as much on that.
Yeah, I think we need to try to figure out how we can close the gap even more. And just to piggyback on what Kiana said, I think we should go back a couple years.
Sure.
Just so you can get a good glimpse. Sometimes a 2 or 3 year look at that might give you a bigger picture.
Sure. And I think I might already have that. I think somebody else had asked about it. What I can do is look for general fund receipts and expenditures related to recreations for 2018 and 2019.
Yeah.
And that'll give you a couple of years that way, and then we'll look at where we are in June as compared to June of last year. Is that what you kind of like?
Yes.
Okay.
Good, Kiana? She says yes.
Okay. Perfect. I will do that. I'll get that together tomorrow, and I'll send that out to council.
Okay. Thanks.
We did summer camps were asked about as well. I spoke with Stephen. We have about 20 campers. With that number of campers, we're probably going to take a bit of a loss on the summer camp, but we'll kind of reevaluate that here in a little bit when he and I get together, and we'll get some numbers on it. But with the 20 campers, I know he had spoken to me, said he was going to go ahead and let go of one of the other counselors to try to get the expenditures down for it. But I think even with what we would have, which is the 20 campers and 3 counselors, if my numbers are right, we're still probably going to lose a couple $1,000s on the camp.
Okay.
Swim Safe. There have been no changes to the Swim Safe contract. The contract is suspended for the year. We'll go back and use Swim Safe next year. Pool repairs. My understanding is that Jerry has spoken to or met with one of the pool companies earlier today to assist with estimated costs and specifications and a timeline for pool repairs. So he and I will get together again this week and kind of talk about that. There should be enough money in the pool levy fund to go ahead and make the repairs that I believe we've kind of been talking about in terms of fixing the water park, the splash park rather, painting both pools and some repairs to the concrete deck. So I think when we open up again next year, it'll look really, really nice. And none of that will be general fund money. That's all pool levy money, so it won't stress the fund out at all.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's talk about recreations. I know on the agenda we had a plan to reduce the general fund expenditures related to recreations. I can set some time aside and talk to Stephen and kind of try to get a plan together. Was there anything specific that you guys wanted me to look at or try to figure out with that?
Well, I know that the initiative, this pretty much came down from Mayor Poole.
Okay.
He wanted an aggressive plan to reduce the general fund. I know he mentioned that. I think it might have been, was that the council meeting? Can anybody remember? I think it was the last council meeting.
Yeah, I think so.
One of those meetings, I know he was saying he wanted an aggressive plan. So I think we need to start thinking about what that looks like. I don't know if we get more programs. You just probably have to think outside the box to try to offset some of those expenditures.
Okay.
We know that we can't keep going down the same path as before. And I think your numbers that you'll give us will help us, see a little bit clearer of how things was. I mean, with a 3-year, I don't know, 2017, 18, 19, I don't know.
Yeah.
Of how that looks, and maybe we can come up with something for even next year.
Okay. I think Ms. Boyd has a question.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Boyd. You're on mute too.
You see this big hand.
I'm sorry. I wasn't looking up. I'm looking down at the paper. Sorry.
Tim and I, when we were talking today, we talked about the fees, membership fees, and ours are incredibly low. And we talked about that. He said a lot of places, their membership fees are higher. For whatever reason that we're low, we discussed, Tim and I talked about grants, you know, possibly we'll be able to talk about some grants. We wanted it affordable for everybody, but they are increasing those might help, but we kind of just tossed that around. He's going to work with Steve on that, but he was mentioning that to me today.
Okay.
Yeah, the fees are always the other side of the equation. You know, what are we charging in comparison to everybody else? Can we charge more and still make it affordable for everybody? But at the end of the day, we just, you know, we end up losing quite a bit on rec every year, and if we can kind of, like you said, kind of close that gap off, it'll help us out. Compensation and retention of police and fire. Jerry and I were going to meet this morning, but he got a little busy. So he and I are going to talk tomorrow to discuss compensation related to police and fire. The goal is to have a proposal for the committee as a whole in August. And we're in the process of hiring an additional police officer. From what Jerry and I discussed last week, there are currently 5 applicants, and interviews are scheduled tentatively to begin July 29th. Is there any questions on that, or any thoughts on compensation and retention?
So you're going to come up with the whole plan for the committee as a whole meeting. I know I had some things on the agenda, some recommendations. So I don't know if you guys can brainstorm that as well for some potential recommendations when you meet.
Yes.
See if you can come up with something.
Yes, and then he and I have both looked at those. But yeah, we'll put something together and make some recommendations on that.
And if anybody else has, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Boyd, anybody else has any suggestions, feel free to either let me know or contact Tim as he's trying to put this together.
Yeah,
so
please do.
If it's something, if some type of dollars that he needs to look into. Go ahead, Ms. Boyd.
Okay, we did, Tim and I, again, we were talking about, and we all were discussing a fire levy, police levy. Mm-hmm. We said, we're looking for other ways to get the money, but it was a consideration. But if we were going to do something like that, it has to be done by August 5th, I believe. 5 o'clock, August 5th, if we were. Tim explained to me about how much he thought would be a good number and ways we can present it to the community. Tim, you remember you told me about the 2 mil levy and how much that would cost a taxpayer per $100,000 value of their home.
Yes, and that's also in the report here. I know that was kind of brought to my attention that was something that I guess was discussed at the safety committee meeting. You know, a police levy I think would be beneficial to the village, in the sense that it would help us close the gap between our officers and the officers in the surrounding communities. It'd probably also help buy equipment like the patrol cars for the police. I did go ahead and put some numbers into our report here, just kind of for informational purposes, so everybody can kind of think about it or consider it however they wish. But looking at what the estimates for our fire levy from the Hamilton County Auditor's Office, basically, if you kind of do the math, a 1 mil levy generates roughly $97,000, and it costs approximately $34 for every $100,000 of home value. So if your house is valued at $100,000 by Hamilton County, you pay an additional $34 in taxes on a 1 mil levy. You know, any help is good. If we decide to do a levy, I would probably try to go for a 2 mil levy. That ought to provide enough additional funding to pay competitive wages to the police department, as well as put some aside to purchase vehicles. So that's always a consideration. But any questions on that?
I'd like to add something that for you, Tim. We shared some information during our safety meeting. Myself and Chief Johnson was told to hold off on discussion in the safety meeting because you and Jerry were going to bring something to tonight's meeting. So we didn't get into a whole lot of it because per his request that we didn't discuss that too much with safety at that time.
Okay.
However, I do have some suggestions. I shared those with some members of council, and a lot of it would have to be doing some simple adjustments of benefits, which would not immediately impact us financially because you have to achieve getting to a certain point in order before those things will become available to you. So in other words, it will help with the retention. So if I stay here 2 years, I'll get 3 years vacation. I'm just for an example. So it make it difficult for people who come on board. We have to make it difficult for them in their decision to leave. Right now, the decision is not difficult for them to leave.
Right.
And we're not attracting what we need to attract. And for those of you who missed it, we were featured on Channel 5 News tonight, and we got a favorable report. So if you guys get a chance, watch it at 11. They're going to repeat it again. And we're one of 3 communities that are hitting the mark on a lot of the stuff that's coming down on the reform. So little old Woodlawn is being recognized, and a lot of work is going into that. And we would like to see us get rewarded for doing the good work that we're doing and retain the people after they come on board and not place them somewhere else in the other communities, because they're going to be a big push for minority representation as well as female hires on these departments who do not have them. And there are a lot. So we've already lost them to some of those departments who were thinking outside the box in advance of this. But as we bring people on board and we're low paying and we're well trained, those other agencies are going to take a chance with our officers because we've got them in a good place. So I just wanted to share that with you, and hopefully that will help council make the best decisions they can make.
My nerves.
I'm sorry? I didn't hear what happened. Somebody say something?
Talking to somebody else.
Okay. So I just wanted to share that with who's all online tonight so that when you guys get together, we can all take a look at what we have and how we can improve upon that. And so we don't start to slide in the other direction.
I had something.
Go ahead, Kiana.
I just had a couple of comments about the levy consideration. I think it's definitely a great idea in a way to generate some additional revenue to help support the fire department. I think that we need to take into consideration timing and think about if we can't get this on the ballot and do all of our due diligence, what we need to do to educate our residents about what this is and why they should support it, then maybe we should consider looking at it for 2021. Just because I don't want this to be rushed. I know Ms. Brown was around for the bulk of when we decided to put the road levy on the ballot, and probably can speak to how much work that took more than I can, but I came in on the tail end of that and remember how much work it took to really talk to the community, engage them, help them understand why this is important and why they should support it. And then the other piece, especially for 2020, is we're in a pandemic and a lot of people have been impacted. Their income has been impacted. And so I think we have to think about, how that would be perceived, asking them to pay some additional taxes again, when we just did that in 2018.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I wholeheartedly agree. Right now, I just don't think it's the right time. It's not good timing to try and put that levy on. We have certainly talked about it, And we had thought too that the next time we do the fire levy, instead of just doing a fire levy, to do a safety levy. However, we're looking 4 years down the road. But right now, I'm just afraid that we possibly would not have the opportunity, the time to put into it, to get out there to the residents, okay? To get them educated on the levy, so forth and so on. And like I said, with the pandemic, people have lost jobs. They haven't gone back to work. And I would rather wait on that as opposed to trying to rush it through for this year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some other suggestions, like Chief mentioned, and those are at the bottom of the Finance Committee agenda under new hire attraction retention recommendations. And these were some of the ideas that came from the meeting from Chief and the group. And so if you could look at those, Tim.
Yes.
And when you're speaking with Jerry tomorrow, maybe see where, you know, if this is going to cost us, where we can put it, you know. Right. Some of these, like Chief said, are some, you know, they have to reach those marks, but at least some of these things could be some of our selling points and the reasons why they should come to Woodlawn and stay with Woodlawn, because we have, you know, lots of perks and things that are attractive. So. Sure.
Yes, and Jerry and I will discuss those and see what makes sense. So we'll have a recommendation together for August to try to make something happen. Okay. We do, and I know Jerry said it before, we understand it's a priority. We want to make sure we retain our police and fire. We've got a lot of good people, and you know, the other communities are able to snipe them up pretty easy sometimes. So we got to make sure we retain those people.
I got one comment I would like to add.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate the work that everyone's putting in. With regards to putting the levy on, whether we put on a tax levy or not, Hamilton County is going to be asking for money from all of us. So they have a shortfall. So they're going to be approaching us all in the fall, in November anyway, because they're trying to make up their shortfall. So whether Woodlawn's taking care of themselves or they're paying the money out to Hamilton County, it's going to go out. So I just wanted to say that Hamilton County is going to be looking to increase their revenues through some type of increase to the taxpayers. That's all I have. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Boyd. We can't hear you. You're on mute.
That's what I was adding. I understand what everybody's saying, to see taxes and in the pandemic, and I do understand that. But I was saying too, as far as educating them, $64 a year per 100,000 of your house. So if you had a $100,000 house, your taxes would go up $64. So I agree with you. Taxes are not the thing to see right now, but I just wanted you to think about that too. If we could educate them to see that $64 per year for every 100,000. I don't know what the average house in Woodlawn is. Do any of you know average property value?
The medium household income is $58,000 in Woodlawn. Right. That information can be found on Niche, and also if you Google it, it'll come up and tell you what our demographics is per household.
So a median home value you can find too?
No, that income.
Income, I know, but I meant this is on your property. Is there can you find? I'm sure you
that information. Yeah, I was saying we can find it. We can find the information.
Okay.
I'll look for it. I'm sure Hamilton County has it, and I can push that out with the other stuff tomorrow.
But you know, you're looking at your new subdivision up there. That's any place from to the $3,000, $100,000. Also in the Timberland area, you guys are looking the upper 100s, 200.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, Ms. Boyd, that the actual dollar amount is minimal, but oftentimes when you're talking about increasing taxes, people don't necessarily consider the amount. They just consider the fact that, okay, you just increased my tax, now you're going to increase it again. And then as Chief Tillman talked about, the county is going to be increasing. People just get really, tired of tax increases, no matter how much it is. So we have to really think about how we engage and communicate about that.
Exactly.
Okay, so Tim, we look forward to your report at the Cal meeting in regards to this, and we'll just move forward then. We'll just make note that as far as putting this on the ballot, it's up in the air. We're probably gonna be too late anyway. You're talking about August 5th, that's another week or so.
I think it would be a struggle for time, but that's more in your realm than mine. We can probably make it happen if we need to. But yeah, we need to decide what we want to do with it one way or the other. Move on to the vehicles if everybody's ready.
Sure.
Okay. I've been working with the police department on vehicle purchases. Currently, it's 2 vehicles for police and 1 for public works is our plan right now. We're going to purchase a public works pickup truck. The one they currently have is in pretty bad shape. And we're going to go ahead and replace 2 of the police cruisers. The village has roughly $10,200 in trade-in vehicles. With the trade-ins, it should bring the total cost of the vehicles to about $114,000. We've got a traffic grant that still has about $5,200 in round numbers left in the fund. So we'll go ahead and pay some of that onto the police vehicles. And then the total financing the village will look at will be about $109,000. I've put some feelers out to both US and PNC Bank on lease purchase agreements. The goal, I think, will be to get about a 3-year lease purchase on these. I've sent, PNC was really good about getting back to me. US hasn't gotten back to me yet. But PNC has contacted me. I've sent them all the financial information they need for the village. I have the estimate for the pickup truck for public works. And then I believe the police lieutenant has the estimate for the police vehicle. So he'll forward those over to me, and I can forward that over to US Bank, or I'm sorry, PNC Bank rather, and we can get some interest rates and see what that'll look like. But that is in the works.
So you're saying this is a 3-year lease, and you may have to educate me on this. So you're talking about financing $109,000 for 3 years.
Correct.
How do you pay that? That's just like a monthly payment that you would make?
It's paid yearly. So
it's paid yearly. Okay.
It is. Yep. We'll pay it once a year, every year. It'll be done after 3 years. After this, they call it a lease purchase agreement. So different from like a regular lease where you turn the car back in. At the end of the lease purchase, but we own it at the end of 3 years. That'll give Public Works a good truck for a good long time. It'll replace a couple of the police cruisers. I know there's some just in really poor shape. So that'll get the police some better cruisers to use.
Are these new cruisers, or what year are these cruisers?
So they'll be brand new off the lot.
These are new cruisers.
Yeah,
okay.
they're brand correct. They should be, what we're discussing are the SUVs. Like we have a couple of them already, I believe, that we've been using. And then the outfitting costs for the SUVs will be about $22,000. So that brings which will also be part of that financing. But in order to put the computers and the lights and paint them properly, it costs a little bit of money. But that'll be beneficial to the police department. And then we can look at, I know there are a couple other vehicles they'd like to replace, so we can kind of look at those next year or the following year to try to get those done as well. But we need to make sure we have adequate adequate vehicles for those guys to drive.
So I have a question. So are there any grants available or to help offset this cost, or those are just usually costs that we don't offset with grants?
There are none available that I have found. It doesn't mean that they're not out there. I'll keep looking for them. I know Hamilton County sent me, or they send us every week, various grant opportunities. I know there was a police grant in that one last week that I was going to try to look into a little bit and see if we could do anything with it. But most of the time, most of the police cars, I believe most people end up financing them.
Okay. And what fund would this come out of?
That's a general fund expenditure. Police, all of police is out of general fund. So their vehicle purchases would be out of general fund. Public works, for a vehicle purchase, we really need to take it out of general as well. They do have access to highway money and street money that comes from the state, but that money is pretty well restricted. So if you were to buy a vehicle and use it out of that fund, you have to show that that vehicle is only being used for those specific purposes. It kind of limits you on the way that it works.
Okay, so I have another question. I'm trying to learn some things too. So if that comes out the general fund,
Yes.
so that's not a budgeted item, so to say. So will that be okay to have that much of an additional expense out of the general fund?
The payments for those vehicles will begin next year. So it'll be an expense for next year. So it really shouldn't affect this year's budget. The $5,100 comes out of a traffic grant fund that we weren't doing anything with. It was money that was kind of sitting. We did technically budget to buy more vehicles, but we budgeted to buy them out of the capital improvement fund, which we later found out was overdrawn. But unfortunately, the vehicles that the police have, as well as the public works pickup truck, are in a pretty sad state. And it's going to be something we're going to need to do one way or the other. But I guess to answer your question, yes, the general fund should be able to support those expenditures, especially knowing the first payment won't happen until next year. The fund will be a little bit more freed up because we've already paid off the fire truck that we had this year, and that frees up roughly $400,000. So I believe we'll be okay with that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because I hear these big numbers.
They are.
As well as, some of the other things that are happening that we're having conversation about, RETA and all these other things that could be a possibility. You're talking about
Sure.
hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then we're still in a pandemic. If it rolls up till next year, then we still have the question mark: are we going to get, the tax dollars in? Is DeWine going to take some of the money that they're giving us? Are they going to say reduce it by X amount? He said that earlier in the year, but it's coming to the second part of the year, the end of the year, third quarter.
Yeah.
What's going to happen then? So I just started to get a little concerned of these huge numbers and things that we're doing. But as long as we're covered.
I think we will be, and it's unfortunately the pandemic's always going to be an X factor, and we'll do the best we can, but we're going to have to roll with the punches as they come, I think, on that.
Yeah, and I understand the fire truck piece, so just make sure, just questions.
Sure.
Rosemary has her hand up. We can't hear you yet. You're mute.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
I know we're looking at all sorts of things for our budget here. What do you think it's looking like? We need more people in service. So what are you thinking it's looking like if we could possibly get two more people in service? Service department is really hurting too. We need more bodies in the service department. It's something that you can look at, and we can discuss further at the council meeting. But just to put that out there on the radar.
Yeah, I think Tony and his crew would certainly benefit with more people.
Mm-hmm.
I know, and not to to disrespect service because they do so much for us. I know our focus currently has been on police and fire to try to retain those guys, but service is certainly right up there with them. And Jerry and I kind of try to make sure we make that part of the discussion every time as well. I think a lot of it is, you know, there's always that, I guess back to Pam's point, there's always kind of some apprehension to do too much. The last thing you want to do is hire 2 more people, and then with the way COVID's been doing things, you find out you can't pay them and you got to lay them off. So we're trying to kind of make it work as best we can.
Yeah. Even if they can
Go
get
ahead.
one person, but they definitely do not need to be overlooked.
No, not at all. I would agree with you there.
So Tim, I think what we probably need to do, you might mention this to Jerry, we probably need to brainstorm just the village in general of what
Sure.
we're lacking and where we might need more bodies. I know on my list today, I have a code enforcer, but that's just one thing. So maybe we need to try to brainstorm of some vacancies or things that we know we need to fill. It may not be 2020, it might be
Right.
second quarter 2021 or 2022 or something. I
Sure.
think we should start to brainstorm that just so we know what it's going to cost us. It doesn't have to be something today, but I think that's a good point that Rosemary made in regards to that.
And I think it may be more of a long-term plan than within the next year as well, like you said. But I will talk to Jerry about that when I meet with him tomorrow.
Okay. I think,
Go ahead.
Ms. Boyd, did you have your hand up too? I can't hear you. Unmute, please.
Tillman and then Kiana.
Okay, Officer Tillman, Chief Tillman,
Okay.
sorry.
I just wanted to make, well, I got 2 things. The first one is to ask of Tim about our drug fund, which is supposed to have money in there. And we could purchase a vehicle using the funds that we put in the drug fund through our operations.
Yes, we're talking, I know which fund you're talking about. There is enough in there to purchase a vehicle, I believe. Jerry and I kind of discussed that. I think we're trying to kind of keep it down to 2 for this year, but I'll bring it up with him again when I meet with him tomorrow.
Okay, well, reason I'm asking that, that's not village money. That's money that the police put there through their drug operations. And that's money that was put there through the DOJ for the purpose of buying supplies or materials that we can use to further do our job. So I don't think that should be something that should be held up when it's not overseeing village funds that came from the Department of Justice through our operations. And generally police chiefs, when they ask for that, they get it because it's not village money.
I disagree that it's still village money and it still needs to be appropriated through the council. But I'll talk to Jerry about it tomorrow. I know that's been a conversation I've kind of had a little bit here and there, but we'll see what we can do with that and see how he feels about it when I bring it up with him again.
So are you saying that, so if we're financing a total of 109,000, if there's 50,000, say, in this drug fund, then we would only have to finance the 59,000?
No, I'm saying
another vehicle, period.
I'm saying we can get our 3rd vehicle that we're asking for.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, we've kind of talked about that a little bit, but I'll bring it up with Jerry again tomorrow. I know there were some other things I want to talk to him about, so I'll see what his thoughts are.
Did I see another hand? Was it Kiana?
It was, but never mind.
Okay. Is there anything
I think
else? Any more discussion on the cars?
Chief Johnson had his hand up.
I can't see him.
Hello.
So that's probably why my screen is.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Madam Chair, how are you?
I'm fine.
Everybody hear me good there?
Yes.
Yes.
And I don't want to jump too far, go back a little bit on the CPR question I guess you had. I don't want to interrupt Tim if he's still moving in another direction.
No, go ahead.
For I guess, Madam Chair, where you're talking about the money for the CPR, were you talking about training or?
I just remember in the meeting I was in with you and Chief, you said something about something that was 14,000. You gave us a picture and I was asking, was that account? Trying to find the account we were talking about. Could we use that money, the coronavirus relief fund or the state fire equipment grant? Could we use that money towards that item?
Machine, yes. Okay, so that's the machine that does the compression for us. So it takes a person completely out the equation and away from touching patients more than what we need to. And actually, I forwarded that email to Tim, and I've already spoke with him about that. And it is okay to use that money for those. It's called the Lucas device. So me and Tim already spoke about that, and he was going to touch base with Jerry on that. But that is available for that fund. And I think that was coming from other fire departments. That was forwarded to me to say that you can purchase this tool with that.
Okay.
That's all I had. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Tim, it's yours.
Sure. Next thing I had on the agenda was code enforcer. From what I could tell, it looks like the village budgeted just a little over $11,000 related to salary for code enforcers, for a code enforcer, excuse me. So that would imply that the village meant for it to be part-time. I know Jerry is working on finding somebody to fill that position, and it's a priority for him. I know we've kind of just some of the council people have kind of discussed trying to find a full-time individual to make that position work. Possibly what we can do is work is hire it out as part-time, see what kind of work that person really has, and then move it to full-time if necessary. Or, if council wants to go in a different direction, then it's certainly their prerogative. But the way the budget is currently structured, it looks like it was supposed to have been a part-time position the way we have it.
So the budget, you said it was how much? 11, how many thousands?
It looked to be it was $11,100 for code enforcement from what I could tell.
For a salary?
Correct. So
that must have been somebody that was probably already in the village.
I would either that, or I think a lot of times we kind of look for somebody that's retired that just wants something to do on the side. But I'll discuss that again with Jerry when I meet with him tomorrow and see where we're at on that. Yeah, I thought perhaps there was somebody they were kind of talking to, and I don't know how that's gone yet either.
Okay, Kiana.
That was a shared position between Woodlawn and Lincoln Heights. So
okay.
That is probably why, and it was part-time Woodlawn. And then we ended up terminating that agreement with the village of Lincoln Heights. So that's probably why that amount
that would make sense.
Is as low as it is.
My suggestion would be to get a full-time code enforcer.
Sure.
And we need one. And I think that person can actually, if taxes still stay here, the tax department could use that person as well. But I think that'll help in trying to figure out who's in Woodlawn and who's not.
Okay.
I don't know what everyone else thinks.
I had some.
The condition of the village is slipping. The condition of the village is slipping. We need someone out here to monitor it, oversee it, and make sure that people are keeping their property up, as well as the businesses, because Woodlawn is slipping and it's visible to me as a resident, as an employee.
Kiana?
I just had a clarifying question for you, Pam. When you said the code enforcer can work in the tax department.
No, I said, I'm sorry, with the tax department, not in it, with the tax department, to try to close some of the gaps up, with trying to figure out what businesses are new here, just trying to work with them to try to get information. Rosemary? Oh, I'm sorry, Kiana. You got another question?
I was just going to make another comment too about, I agree that it needs to be a full-time person. I think we need somebody full-time that can do this and be committed to it and work with other departments. But I'm also in my mind thinking about previous discussions where we keep talking about spending money, more and more and more money. So I think we need to think about that too, what that additional cost would be to hire somebody full-time on top of all of the other things that we talked about that are going to be an expense for us, especially since we're in this pandemic and we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, then I think we have to look at what our real needs are in the village too.
Yeah.
What benefits, are we going to get from that person doing that job?
Right.
As well. And we probably have to look at that when we look at all the other jobs that we want to replace or add to. And that's why we need to cut our expenses as much as possible, if we can, on things that may not be that we need.
Agree. And we still need to consider what our plan is going to be for hiring a village manager as well. I think that's critical position that we need to fill.
I totally agree.
And a financial assistant so I can get my lieutenant back.
We understand.
I like having him. I'm not going to lie.
He's great.
Yes, he's the best.
Hey, Rosemary has her hand up.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and I can preach on this from now until we need a full-time code enforcer. Our village is beginning to look very bad, okay? And if we don't do something within the next 5 years, we are going to be in a condition where nobody is going to come to the village. We want to do economic growth. We've got to get a hand on this right now. And what we need to do, what we have to do is sit down and discover how we're going to do it. Is spend money where money needs to be spent. Okay? And
totally agree.
A part-time code enforcer to me would not do it, because what I can see happening is they will come in as a part-time, maybe get things cleaned up, but if you're not going to stay on people, you're going to be right back where we started from, right behind the 8 ball, trying to catch up. We need a full-time code enforcer, and I have some other things that I wanted to bring to the CAL meeting where we might be able to do something, but I wanted to get some more numbers. Yeah, okay. But
since employees are performing dual roles, if I'm needed to assist in the code enforcement, we already have employees doing multiple duties. I would be willing to offer my assistance on a part-time basis to help with the community, with the code enforcement. I just wanted to say that to the council and to Tim, just to have an idea that I'm available to assist as much as I can to make sure the village is in good standing.
Because if we care anything about our village, that's one of the things that needs to be up there as a priority also.
Totally agree.
I'm just going to say I agree as well. And Rosemary, I know you've talked about this a couple times about us having a retreat as council. And I think that's part of what we need to do so that we can think about what kind of our plan, our strategic plan is, and develop a priority list for all the things that, we believe need to happen in what order by priority. Otherwise, we're going to keep spinning our wheels talking about this. I think every year we should have something where we're talking about what the plan is for the year and what we would want to accomplish as a body.
Exactly.
Most definitely. And I know Brian wants to have a retreat, and then we have this pandemic that came along, which put a jolt in everything.
Right.
You're exactly right. We need to, whether we can get in a room someplace, spread out.
Yeah.
And sometimes it may take a day to talk through this and get things worked out, but it needs to happen. But, Tim's there, Jerry's there working on it. But they need to know our wishes too,
Yeah.
since we're speaking for the public.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll make sure I bring up the code enforcer to Jerry again tomorrow when he and I talk. It seems like from the cross section of council I have today, everybody wants this to be a full-time position. So I'll let him know your wishes as well.
Okay.
That was all I had for code enforcer. In terms of new business, I provided a list of intra-fund transfers. Again, those don't affect the budget. We're just moving money around within the departments. There's kind of a longer list this time around. A lot of that was due to kind of getting everything adjusted per LGS, and one of the other parts of that is when we went to make the adjustments, one of the controls that's nice about UAN is that if you start to spend things into a negative, it won't let you do it because of those adjustments that had gotten turned off. So we'd seen it, but we weren't sure how it was going to work out yet. So now that we have a better idea, we've gone ahead and corrected those. Bank reconciliations. I have this reconciled up through February of 2020. I started March today. My goal is to have us current by the time we meet again in August. So that'll be good. You guys, and once I have us reconciled, I'll make sure to include the bank reconciliation in your financial packets so you guys can get that complete picture of your finances. We got a couple of new grants that I kind of touched on before. Fire department got 2 of them. The one was the state grant for the purchase of training equipment, training and equipment. And then they also received a private grant in the amount of $1,500 for the purchase of tablets. So that was really, really nice for them. We received as a village $51,388 from Hamilton County as part of our coronavirus relief funding. So that'll be available to offset any expenditures related to coronavirus. We can use that to reallocate expenditures that we've already made, as well as to offset the cost of any payroll or if people have, if we had them stay home for a couple weeks because they've been exposed or because they've tested positive. Tax budget, I went ahead and filed the extension for our tax budget, so we'll submit that to Hamilton County in August. I felt that was best just because the tax deadline had been pushed back to July. It'll give us a better idea of what we can expect. We do need to set a date for hearing for that before we submit that to Hamilton County.
Can you explain that a little bit of what that is?
The tax budget?
Yes.
Yeah. Ohio Revised Code states that we have to submit a tax budget to the county auditor every year. It's normally submitted in July. It's a fairly detailed budget where we list out what we believe our tax revenues will be as well as the expenditures. That gets filed with the county budget committee. It's just sort of a way, I think, for the county to kind of keep track of what all the entities are doing. But it also, and to be fair, also to make sure the public knows what our estimates are. And that's the purpose of the hearing. So the public is able to be informed as well.
Okay.
Legislation, village law director is working on some legislation that I've spoken to her about. We do need to change our tax ordinance to cease the 2.4% of village income tax collections from going into the pool debt fund. We talked about that at the last finance committee meeting. Then we'll go ahead and take the 2.4% and add that over to the general obligation debt fund, the 3101 fund, to help eliminate the negative fund balance in that. Also asked the village law director to put together legislation to increase mayor's court computer fund costs from $1 ticket to $10, which is the amount we're allowed to charge for Ohio Revised Code. I have, anybody have any questions about those? I'm sorry.
No.
No, okay. I've also put together an advance ordinance that is included in your packets. And basically, we're just going to go ahead and advance, we're going to ask permission, I guess, to advance $1,200 from the general fund to the fire equipment grant fund. That grant that the fire department got is a reimbursement grant. So they need to go ahead and spend the $1,200 and the state will reimburse that to us. Once it's reimbursed, we'll advance it back to the general fund. Transfer ordinances, I have 2 of them. In January 2020, it looks like the village made a transfer from the general fund to the debt service fund. We just need to go ahead and approve that. I couldn't find anywhere in legislation where it was approved. So we need to approve that and make that legal. The other transfer I have relates to our Woodlawn Meadows fund. The Woodlawn Meadows administrator kind of does an audit of that as well, and it looked like it had come up short. I spoke with, he spoke with Brenda, our bond counsel, and they agreed that we had received about $7,800 in April of 2019 that should have been turned over to Bank of New York. So we need to go ahead and make that transfer so we can pay Bank of New York that money. And then I included an appropriations ordinance as well. There's some big numbers in there. I went ahead and tried to explain what some of those expenses are related to. The biggest ones really have to do with principal and interest payments that'll be related to our debt that'll come due in December, as well as early January. Since the government obligation debt fund as well as is overdrawn, we're going to need to use general fund money to pay those debts. So that's what the biggest chunk of that is. The rest of it has to do with the additional expenditures from Strauss and Troy, auditing services and LGS's fees, as well as a couple of old expenditures that we had from 2019. And I can go over that in more detail if somebody wants me to, but I was just sort of trying to summarize it. Are there any questions about that or anything anybody wants to discuss?
I think I have a question. Gregory Force Lester?
Yes.
What is that?
Gregory Force Lester is
right? $26,000 worth of repairs or expenses?
Well, he makes up a chunk of it. Gregory Force Lester is the company we use to cut down and do maintenance on trees. We had an expense from him, I guess, in December of last year that didn't get paid until this year. The other part of that, of the $26,000, I believe had to do, they had to do with insurance expenses as well.
Question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Not insurance. That had to do with repairs to one of the village vehicles. That was from Koffenberger.
Okay. My question, I guess, is when there are large, I don't know if I asked this before, when there are large expenditures that are coming through, like say over 25,000, is that something that goes through an approval process?
Anything that is not already budgeted for, I believe certainly over 25,000 should be approved by council. The Gregory Force Lester thing obviously occurred before I got here. I don't believe that was over 25,000 though. The other one was from Koffenberger. I believe that was from one of the public works trucks, if I remember correctly. But that was repair work that needed to be done to that truck. But there is a certain amount that is supposed to be approved by council. And answer your question, yes.
It's $10,000. Anything
10,000. There you go.
Okay,
But,
so if I look at the payment listing and if there's something over $10,000, should that be a red flag to me to say either it was budgeted for? How do I know that when, one of us, when we're reviewing, I don't know, is it the payment listing? How do we know there should be some type of flag going through our head saying, well, I don't remember this, or
sure.
I'm curious.
Some of those items would have been essentially appropriated for and should have been discussed at the council meetings. essentially, if we have an expenditure that hasn't already been approved, we should be bringing that to council. And there should be a control for that. I may have to get back to you on a good way for you to figure that out.
Okay.
Because I don't know that there's a good way to figure it out just looking at the reports.
Tim,
Yes.
Tim, normally things go through each committee as like it's going through each committee tonight. So basically, if there's a dollar amount that needs to be approved by council, it would go through the various committees in order to get voted on. So my understanding, you would know about it in advance by it going through the various committees. And it'll get finalized on the floor during council night. Or
Yeah,
not.
it would be legislation brought forth to full council. Anything over
Typically,
10.
that's- Yeah, typically that's how it's supposed to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to think if there was a good way to just flag those so we knew what those were. I'll have to think about that and see if there's a better way I can just do that for you guys.
Okay.
I think maybe the only exception may be like for expenditures like for the water bill or
Yeah.
the energy.
Ongoing stuff.
Right. Payroll and
Payroll,
benefits and things. Yeah, those are not included. The things you're talking about, generally speaking, have to relate to equipment purchases and repairs and things of that nature.
Just want to make sure management or department heads, directors are, reviewing those things and getting approval. Just making sure the control is there.
I know any expenditure currently supposed to be on a requisition that goes through Jerry. Anything that's kind of an emergency. Again, they're still supposed to submit a requisition for Jerry to review. And he's always available on his cell phone or via email for him to get in contact with them if they need something immediately. I guess actually, what I didn't put under new business, we've gone ahead and made moves to have the requisition process will eventually happen through UAN. All the department heads will have UAN on their computers as read-only access, with the exception of requisitions. And that'll make it a little bit more fluid as well. Once they're in UAN, Jerry will be able to review them that way.
Then they'll just be kept as a record, right?
Correct. And we're trying to make sure that all the requisitions start to flow through UAN. I'd like to do it at the beginning of August. I don't know that might be a little bit too aggressive. We just literally got everybody's computer set up with it today. So it may take us a minute to schedule a time to show everybody how to use it. But that is coming in August. I think that's going to help us out tremendously as well.
Okay.
I believe that's all that I had. Did anybody have any other questions or anything I can help them with?
I have a question, Tim.
Yes, sir.
Did they table moving the vehicles to law, or is that going to be moved to law?
The vehicles, I still have to get the rates from US Bank, and I'll talk to Emily a little bit more about it this week. But I believe I believe in order to get that through, I've got to put legislation together that would include the interest rates and such on the lease purchase. So as soon as I can get all the information together about the vehicles and shoot it over to PNC and they can give us some rates, we can put the legislation together for that. And we can move on that pretty quickly, I believe, once we have it.
Okay, reason I asked because the manufacturer of our order has to go in a certain time. So
Yes.
It is time sensitive for us. So we were hoping that it would go before council at the end of the month, but doesn't look like that's going to be. It's going to have to go back through another series of the committees.
I don't think it has to. I think if we can get the legislation drafted, we can put that out as a memo, which is what we've done in the past with things. So I think there's still an opportunity to get that in front of council before the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I just have one last comment, if no one has any other questions for Tim. Just hopefully, we're in third quarter right now with it being July going into August, and I'm hoping that as we move forward going towards 2021, we'll be looking at our 2021 budget at some point near going into third and fourth quarter. And I'm hoping we can just look at line items to see where we can reduce expenses. So I know some things you won't be able to reduce, but if there's things that we can look at, I think we should try to look at.
I would agree. I believe we try to do a temporary budget generally in December. I'd like to have something put together in November for everybody to look at and review. That way we're not kind of doing it at the last minute. People have the opportunity to digest it and make any comments or suggestions they want. Yeah.
And I just think we should think ahead just because we know the ball's going to be rolling.
Yeah.
With some reductions in probably our general fund. So anything we can come up with, you know, if it's some type of service or whatever it is, I think we should kind of take the time to those buckets.
The nice thing, just kind of thinking about what Charles had talked about at the beginning of the meeting, if you look at the numbers, our tax revenues are down about 5% if you look at everything in total right now. And I don't think we have a super clear picture of that until we get all of everything in for July with the deadline being pushed back. But I think we're already, you know, in my view, a little bit better off than a lot of the other communities. So hopefully that'll kind of be the trend. But it's like anything else, you want to prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah, when I heard the numbers, just as an example, I had heard that only 32%, they said only 32% of people paid their July house note.
Oh, yeah.
That made me think, well, if, you know, we got people unemployed. If people aren't paying their leases and house notes, they're not paying their taxes.
Right.
So
I would agree.
It's almost expected just because of things that are happening in society today. So,
yeah.
Rosemary.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Tim, do you think maybe we can push for a review of that budget in October?
I can try.
That we can get something to look at in October.
Like a tentative type something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's doable. I'll have a lot of numbers by then. I can probably figure something out.
Okay.
So I'll make a note to make sure you guys have a budget review in October.
That could be like a preliminary. I mean, it's subject to change.
Yeah, well, whatever we do is considered temporary anyway. Then we do the permanent around March, so we should be good.
Typically, what we used to do was in each department would come and we would have a budget. You know what I'm saying? In the department, when we have our meetings,
go
over that department's budget.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that'll actually be the nice thing with what we've been able to do with UAN. I was able to get the accounts segregated by department. So the department heads will have the ability to click on a filter on UAN and it'll bring up all the expenditures they've had throughout the year, as well as any revenue streams. And I think that's really gonna benefit them when they try to put that together, give them some good insight on what's been going on within their own departments.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Tim, for all the information, the package that you made up, lots of great information. Now we can move to new business. Is there any new business anyone wants to discuss?
Yeah, Tim had the new business. All those different items that he had is what he listed under new business, right?
That was mine, but if somebody else has something, you know.
Oh, I got you.
Now's the time.
He is 90% of the agenda, so if anybody else had any other topics or anything they wanted to discuss, now is the time. Oh, sorry, Rosemary, yes.
I just wanted, Tim, when you talk to Jerry tomorrow.
Yes.
Just let him know that. I just want to make sure I'm understanding you. You said the money that we have in the pool fund, the pool levy fund, we have monies there, approximately enough to do repairs to the pool.
Correct.
Okay. So
yes.
Yeah, we're ready to move on that. We want to.
Okay.
And that to me is time sensitive too, because I think if there's concrete or something that has to be poured or whatever, there's a certain time frame that has to be done for as weather-wise.
Yeah, you don't want to do it when it's wet. I know that, or cold or too cold.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And I think it's so many months, right?
I'm sorry.
So many months that they were taken to actually complete the repairs for the pool.
I don't know that I have good information on that. I know the meeting Jerry had today, I believe he had discussed a timeline with a vendor that would help us with that. So I'll talk to him tomorrow and see what the timeline looks like.
And again, the money we have in the pool levy, those are dollars.
Correct.
Those are actual dollars, okay? Right?
Yep. Yes,
right.
Those are actual dollars that we get to spend on the pool.
Okay.
Yep.
So you should make that a priority when you talk to him tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, I'll let him know.
Give us an answer.
You guys want to move on that?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I had sent Jerry an email after our recreation meeting about getting that done. And I think I saw somewhere, I don't know where I was looking, where he did talk to somebody, put a bid in or something.
There was a bid from last October, and that was is like 3 different scenarios that mostly had to do with the splash park. But I know along with the splash park, there's some other items that we need to get done, including, like I said, the concrete deck and painting the pools, I believe.
Yeah, something was just brought to my attention in the last few days. It might be an email that Jerry sent back to that I was included in, but that's something he had worked with something, or has spoken to somebody, or put in or had somebody put in a bid, or wanted to accept a bid. There's been something going on with that in the last couple of weeks.
I'll follow up with him tomorrow on that. Yeah.
Is there anything else? New business? Well, thank you for your time. Seems like this was a pretty good meeting. Lots of information. Need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
At 8:35.
I second it.
Thank you.
We need a vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Everybody. Thanks, Kiana, for taking the minutes.
Good
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
night.